Now the point here, there are more than 115 of such bodies to be reckoned with, and all are at varying stages of vibratory impulse, meaning they have their own evolutionary status, their own rays, which will be most interesting. They have definite orbits, they turn upon their axis, they draw their life and substance from the sun, but owing to their relative insignificance, they have not yet been considered factors of moment. Well, you kind of wonder whether the planetoids per se, which orbit around a planet while that planet is orbiting around the sun, are included here, or if only those planets which are actually in their own right orbiting around the sun and have their own specific orbit. Suffice it to say, what an amazingly complex, veiled solar system we live in at this time. And we can extrapolate this kind of knowledge. There are so many non-sacred, relatively insignificant planets in our solar system. Why should there not be a great number of non-sacred, relatively insignificant stars in particular constellations, of which we may perhaps see only the most luminous stars that are related? So we do have to distinguish very greatly between the sacred and developed planets and those which have a long way to go before they reach their status. The principle of hierarchy operates all through nature, and planets have their own hierarchy. Stars, stellar beings, have their own hierarchy. Constellations have their own hierarchy, and I'm sure one day it will be proved that, let's stop with galaxies, although we could go on, that galaxies themselves have their own hierarchy, and that there are galaxies of lesser and greater development. So DK goes on, after describing these 70 or more than 115 planets, all with their own principles, their own psyche, their own ray energies, their own influence. He goes on to say, I desire to give you a truer and more accurate picture. This has now become possible because group awareness, group relations, and group integrity are coming to the fore of human consciousness. I suppose we correct each other by our differing points of view within the group. In other words, the group always knows more than the individual if the group is composed of similar individuals. As this takes place, the personality which is individual, separative, and self-centered will recede increasingly into the background, and the soul, non-separative, group-conscious, and inclusive, will come more and more to the fore. Well, I believe he here is talking about the selfish, integrated personality which is not soul-infused. The instrument that we call the soul-infused personality is still very important, and we have to cultivate it even up until the fourth initiation. But there is a stage earlier in which the personality, for a series of, he describes it, 3 lives, 7 lives, sometimes even 11 lives, is very much selfishly integrated around its own mental center. and is not responsive to the more inclusive influences of the ego, with a capital E, on its own plane. So because we are beginning to respond more as souls, and souls are group conscious, the astrology of the soul can now make its impression upon us. Not the full astrology of the soul, of course, but at least an understanding of how the individual horoscope can be used in order to indicate how soul influence can reach that personality. The soul is group conscious, and the heart, which is the major organ of the soul at this time, is a transpersonal organ, and it is an organ which reveals group consciousness. And when I speak about the organ, I'm speaking about the heart chakra per se on all of its different levels, which are astral and also even higher mental in terms of the egoic lotus. Interest, therefore, in the individual horoscope will gradually die out. Well, so much depends upon the meaning of the word gradually. The individual horoscope is very much with us at the present time, and it serves to help people understand how they can adjust their energies to the plan which they as a soul are holding for a particular incarnation. So I would say that before the individual horoscope dies out, we have to perfect the interpretation of the individual horoscope and show how this horoscope can be useful in revealing the destiny of the soul for any particular incarnation. So gradually, perhaps sometime during the Aquarian age, which will be a great group age, we will see how this may fade from human consciousness, but the time is certainly not yet. And he says, increasingly, the planetary, the systemic, and the universal picture will stand out in the awareness of the individual. Well, all of us as monads are cells within one of the chakras of the planetary logos, so that when we become initiates of the 6th degree, we will truly be planetary lives. We will be monads in full expression. And when we think of our identity, we will think much more of the planet as a whole, rather than of some individual personality or even individual egoic body, which by then will have faded away. We also can develop eventually the solar systemic point of view. That's a long way away. Perhaps we would have to be initiates of the 7th degree to do that in the proper manner. Then there's the question of the universal picture. Now, sometimes our little solar system is referred to as a universe. It's a very small meaning of the term. But I like to think of it as a much more cosmic picture. And when I think of the greatest of all beings, that all-inclusive one being of our entire cosmos, I like to call that being the universal logos. Then, for me, the universe means all possible manifestation on all planes, and all-inclusive, all-inclusive. Okay, so, and already we are becoming interested in this greater planetary, systemic, universal picture. DK is nurturing us in this, and in some ways, people shy away from this book because the picture it presents is too big. They really want to focus on the person and his immediate problem, and that is a very legitimate approach. But from a higher perspective, that person is but a cell in a larger entity, which the person in his true identity actually is. The larger identity in which we are that cell is our truer identity, and on and on. We will find that our true identity gets bigger all the time and more inclusive all the time. There are some people who can say, I am humanity, and they can mean it, and they know what it means. There are some who can say, I am the planet, and they know what that means. And eventually, very high beings will be able to say, I am the solar system. The word individual is interesting because it is somewhat related to the idea of indivisible. So it has a kind of a contradictory meaning to the way it is usually used. The true individual, or the true indivisible, is the being who knows that he is all those other beings who appear within his contents of consciousness. But for now, we use the term individual as that which is divided and distinct from others of its kind. We use it in the lower Leonian sense. So when this greater expansion of interest occurs, and the interest in the personality and even in the ego on the higher mental plane dies out, he will then regard himself only as an integral part of a far more important whole, and his world group will interest him far more than himself as an individual. That is already, would we not say, that is already the ashramic perspective. When a person is a true, I'm going to try to get the glare off my glasses, sorry about that. I can't really do it. Okay, well, blinded by the light. All right. When a person is a true member of an ashram, his spiritual identity is invested in that ashram, and his eyes are not upon himself only as an individual, but the individual that he is seen as the instrument and expression of the ashram. We have to move towards that state of consciousness, which is certainly far more inclusive than the one we normally live in. And the new astrology is meant for individuals who can move beyond, as I've called it before, the skin-encapsulated ego. Really move beyond that. And that is possible as we suffer, as we experience pain, as we become more sensitized. Then we can no longer shut the rest of the world out, because what it feels is what we feel, and then we discover that we are it. So that sensitization leads us into soul consciousness, where the new astrology will be useful.